Hi everyone, I'm Deadline film reporter Mac Robar, and welcome back to The Process. Today we have a conversation on the music and songs of Searchlight Pictures Theater Camp with writer-director Nick Lieberman and composer-songwriter Mark Sonnenblick. Please enjoy.
Hello and welcome to The Process. I'm Nick Lieberman, one of the co-directors and co-writers of Theater Camp, and I'm here today with Mark Sonnenblick, our wonderful composer of the songs that are in the film, and we're here to talk a bit about the process, his process, how he comes to music, how he handled this wild and crazy project. And so, hello, Mark.
Hey, Nick. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. So just like starting at the kind of beginning, much pre-theater camp, how did you come to music? What in your upbringing sort of led you to music?
Piano lessons, I guess. That was the first thing. No, yeah, just been lucky for a lot of my life that was around kind of like theater too, like arts programs like in my elementary school, and some amazing teachers both in music and other classes that just really sort of encourage creativity in an amazing way. And mostly played piano, played a little bit of viola as well. But
Were your parents musical at all, or
no, not at all. My one of my grandparents played piano a little bit, but I'm kind of the only person in my certainly like long term who's kind of both making music but really in a more kind of creative industry at all. They're in much harder industries, I feel like, in many ways. But yeah.
when you were just first starting out, because a lot of us take piano lessons and learn to play things written by other people. Like, what was that shift? Did that come early on to writing your own songs and music?
Yeah, it weirdly did. I don't think I've ever even told this story, so good job, interviewer. But I like have a very distinct memory of this person in elementary school, a friend whose name I can't remember. I can see his face very like distinctly, but this must have been like second or third grade, who said, I'm making a movie and I want you to write the music for it. I'd never written anything. And it was a horror movie about a doll that comes to life. And I was like, oh yeah, of course I play piano. Like I'll do that. And spent some time with my piano teacher, who like was like, okay, well, you want to write something, like let's get some sheet music. And composed the theme to Dragnet, which is like dun 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 dun.
Right.
I just wrote that like, and not, I'd heard that theme and didn't know it was that. And I was like, this is kind of scary. But after we did that for like 2 piano lessons, I'm not sure I ever saw this person again. I don't know who this person is. I don't like it was a weird thing where like, even when I told her like, I'm going to write the song for this movie, her name was Donna, and I took piano from her for
the piano teacher. I thought you meant the kid just showed up like, under a cloak and was like, I need you to write music.
No, the kid. I don't know who this kid is. Yeah. And so like part of me is like, did I dream this? Because when I it doesn't make any sense. Why would this kid have been making a movie? Like nothing about the story. And she rolled with it. She was like, yes, you are writing a song for this movie. And of course they asked you to do it. But yeah, like I had never written music before. Like nothing about it really makes any sense. And I think that maybe it's one of those I maybe misunderstood what he was saying, but it was a strange thing. But that was the first like piece of music that I wrote, was music that already existed. Yeah.
But, but I think there is something very interesting about the way in which like all your listening and all the things that you were taking in. Like, I still think that you're so amazing at synthesizing reference and yet producing your your kind of own full take and melody and sensibility out of that. It's so funny that, you know, your first piece of music you were writing was really just full on. The synthesis maybe wasn't fully happening yet. Maybe it was just
Yeah.
1-to-1.
I mean, did you ever like have, when you were first starting to make things or make movies, were you ever, I feel like some people, it's like, I want to recreate that shot from this movie, or I want to like film this scene. Were you ever like mimicking something exactly, or?
You know, I feel like I definitely did like little projects with my friends as a really young kid, and then definitely later with Ben and Molly and Noah, who, you know, I wish were here to be a part of this conversation as well. But there was one particular assignment we had in school in class that was to recreate a scene, and in this case, it was a scene from Indiana Jones. It was like the scene where, you know, the guy pulls out they're like having a fight at the bazaar, and one of the guys pulls out a knife and he pulls out a gun. And yeah, I don't know why that was the scene that they chose to recreate. And I'm not even sure that I was like the director of it, but I remember that we got like every kid that was free that period in high school when we were like 15 to come be extras. And so it was like 60 kids. And I figured out how to like block shoot it and how to set up the whole like system of the background coming through and getting dressed and getting into position. And I got really into like, I'd already been making things, but I got really into just how efficiently and how systematized you could be. And so that was definitely a super interesting learning experience that was not like fundamentally creative. And yet I feel like I've drawn upon, like lit a spark in me where it's like, oh yeah, there's also this fun puzzle element to filmmaking that, you know, also gets me out of bed in the morning, in addition to the more creative thinking through the creative problems. So you were playing piano, you had this one amazing commission in third grade that maybe never made it onto the screen. And so then, you know, you were performing as well throughout that time?
Yeah. This was lucky, particularly with theater. So yeah, piano lesson, I feel like a lot of people take piano, and that was something where that was outside of school. But in school, there what we would do like a musical every year. California had, I don't know if you ran into this, but I weirdly, one of my friends from Northern California, there were these couple of musicals, I should know who wrote them and I don't, but they're like about the kind of California history or different. There was one that was called On the Right Track, and there was one called The Adventures of Lewis and Clark that was like about Lewis and Clark. And I played their dog, which their dog's actual name was Seaman, but they changed that for this elementary school production. Scannon. But I like was in a dog suit and sang this song, and then in this show that I was like, oh, it's a random California musical, and it was great and it was fun, but kind of this educational thing. And I thought that Mrs. Draper, who was the drama teacher and or like really came in and kind of brought this to from like first grade all through elementary school. Just again, got very lucky with teachers and resources. But I was like, she found this kind of weird show. We did another one called like On the Right Track, and you know. But then ran into like one of my best friends in college who I'd known for, you know, all of college, like junior year or something. It came out that he in Northern California had also been in The Adventures of Lewis and Clark and had also played Scannon. And we knew the song.
Wow. So this was a statewide mandate. Got
yeah. Well, you did not do this show. You did not.
No, I didn't do this show, but
yeah.
But yeah, so and then you continued doing musical theater for a while.
This land is beautiful, and the stage could go here, and all the children looking for somewhere to belong. I can almost see them.
A girl with an open snapple,
a boy who's looking down.
The faces and the memories
that we have from right now. Raise a glass for everyone that will come through these halls.
But
But in the glass isn't alcohol, it's something more profound. And the holes aren't holes at all, of course they're trees and lakes and birds.
We started writing this project like almost 2 years ago now. I mean, not quite, but a little less than 2 years. So yeah, which is so crazy to think about.
And did you always know, like, when you made the short, the idea was let's turn this into a feature, use this as kind of a way to pitch it something longer?
Yeah, we always saw it as kind of a proof of concept. We weren't sure exactly what that concept was going to be initially, or we had some ideas. It ended up being a little different than it was. I think at the time we were very interested in, you know, both the world of theater camp and also maybe making it sort of an anthology show and having the same actors in each of these workplaces and treating it sort of like these like Frederick Weissman PBS institutional documentaries. But as we started to, I think, get feedback from other people and also, you know, specifically when Picture Start got involved, which was many years after we made the short, they were very focused on like, it should be a movie that's theater camp. And we were so excited and down for that as well, because we had been trying to tell our theater camp story for a long time. We started writing the scriptment shortly after Picture Start got involved, and always knew from the beginning that we wanted a musical to end the whole movie. We definitely tried a lot of other structuring agents other than even like Troy and you know, who's the crypto bro son of the founder who takes over the camp, for those of you who haven't seen it. We tried some other ideas, and I mean, we're so glad we landed on that, but we always knew
what were some of the scrapped?
I think at one point we were exploring, you know, a playwright, a woman playwright who was trying to write a play about the like American teen, and then it decides that she's going to go to this theater camp, but then the kids there are so weird and not indicative of American teens in the way that we all would have been very bad indications of American teens, and so ends up like kind of changing what she's doing entirely and writing a musical. I mean, we had a lot of wild ideas that you have to go through, but
that might have like centered a female character too much. Like this way you were able to find and bring in, but I mean,
he's Molly's call, of course, to just make sure that she was
yeah, she was always like, I'm the only one who no, I mean, it obviously, like, yeah, where it landed. I just remember in reading the script too, feeling not knowing going in a little bit like what it was going to be like obviously in general loving kind of mockumentaries and loving the vibe, and also even though I didn't go to a theater camp like in the movie, having both like gone to summer camp that wasn't specifically theater, and then also a bunch of sort of theater programs, had that background. But I think I was really prepared to, even if I thought I might enjoy it, for it to be really heavy on the mock part of the mockumentary, to be really kind of vicious. And I, even in that first draft, which I'm sure was your whatever draft, but before it started shifting, was so moved because of how deeply it cared about, like, that it was a love letter, and not in like a love letter sort of, we love it, but we need to annihilate it. We're going to annihilate it a little bit, but actually we do really believe in what places like this are, and what both theater as a space for people who don't always fit in, people who may, like, whether it's through who they are, whether it's through how they look, the idea of being able to step into a space that embraces transformation. You become other people. Like, I just remember that through the course of a project in high school, whenever it was, like, and middle school, you form a little village, a community, where it's like the work, this probably silly work, but it really matters to all of us, and it gives us a common vocabulary to speak and connect about. And that was so present, even as, all the details were ridiculous. And so anyway, I just was very excited to meet with you all to talk about it. And of course, being able to write songs, I think a lot of what I write, musical theater, the songs are through the whole movie, which I love too. But it was nice to be, it's also a struggle because there's a lot of weight on the songs to like tell the story in a deep way. And so it was nice to be, by the time we're here, it's like going to be icing on the cake and we're just going to get to see it. And I just knew it was going to be really, really fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess a little background even of how we got to that moment is just that like we had written the movie or the scriptment, which was sort of this like template for the improv, but very clearly structured, and most of the kind of bones of the movie were already in that document. But we hadn't written this musical. You read this movie and you get to the end and it's like, and then there's this amazing climax and there's these numbers kind of vaguely, but like, how can you know whether that's going to pay off? And I think we knew that we were a little indie movie that needed to keep pushing up the hill, as is so often the case, and make sure that we made a great case for the movie getting made and for there being an audience. And so, it was definitely a priority for us to get that music written very early, as early as possible. And so you very graciously jumped on while we were still putting a lot of the pieces together and figuring out a lot of the movie, and we dove in. But yeah, as soon as we met you, we felt such an immediate kinship. I think all of us knew like, okay, this is somebody who not only has the chops and the resume that like lets us know that this person can pull this off, but also just got what was funny to us about what we were doing. And that's, you just want to feel like when somebody's laughing, they're laughing at the same thing you're laughing at, and with four of us, it's easier. It's like, you don't have to hit all four. It's just like, and I'd be curious your kind of experience of all of that. But just one last note on the very origins. I remember when we had our first Zoom with you, I knew that we didn't want this musical to be too, too like treacly and too like lean into the sentiment too much and still have like a bit of edge. And I think we all love Sondheim and love those, 60s and 70s musicals that he was doing that have this kind of, like a quality that is in conversation with what popular music was doing at that time. And so I remember we asked you, I definitely really wanted to hear something really weird that you had done. And you sent us like some songs, some sample songs. And like one was extremely kind of almost like a post-punk, like, I don't know what that was from. That's from another musical that you wrote, like almost spoken word driving, like skronky kind of
that was my Colorado band. That's actually like, that was our, we kind of made it into a show later, but yeah, that was from that.
Yeah, no, so that was really awesome to hear. And immediately it was like, okay, this person's working in, sounds that are a step outside of musical theater. You sent us a song called Advice. You also sent us a song called Advice, which, I immediately heard, or I heard and was like immediately laughing out loud so hard and my roommates were like, what is like, literally, what are you listening to? And it's just a brilliant song with an incredible punchline that takes a very strange journey. I don't know if anybody can hear it online or it's accessible. Probably not. But yeah, check out Advice by Mark Sonnenblick if he'll send it to you. It got him the job. No. It sealed the deal.
But in the same way, like so many other things too, but like specifically musically, was excited that we were like, the conversation was, and the task was not purely, we want it to sound exactly like this song. We want it to be like a direct parody of this thing, and actually being very interested in it is going to refer to the, I mean, you know, I'm also so curious, like I'll ask you in a second, but you know, each song had like a reference world of musical theater, but it wasn't like this is a parody of this specific song. And you cared about, like I remember with No Tomorrow, you like made a playlist. We're like, this disco, not this disco. There was like the good disco playlist and the bad disco playlist, and none of them were musical theater. And it was like, that is something that I really love, in addition to the mechanics of musical theater, which is I've never like put together sonically a disco song quite like that, but it was like, here's an opportunity, in the same way you're saying, like, move 60 people around, and let me try to figure this out, and like, let me listen, and okay, he really doesn't want this disco song on the bad disco list, so let's really, let's stay away from that. And but the fact that that was the conversation was really exciting, on top of everything else.
Studio 54. Dark room, bright lights. Debbie, Harry wearing tights. Stiff drink, high heels.
David, Gavin doing deals.
Lovers and strangers and big chandeliers. Got no homes to go to.
So I'm staying here.
Live it up,
Like there's no tomorrow.
give it up.
To the groovy disco, glittery light.
Live it up,
'Cause if there's no tomorrow, nothing matters to me. So get lost inside a boogie tonight.
And cue cocaine.
Don't you have school tomorrow?
give it up.
Suddenly the disco doesn't feel right.
Here's away the cobwebs and the sorrow.
Someone's gotta save you from degenerate behavior tonight. Quick, give me your hand, little girl. I'll save you.
I'm an artiste. An artiste don't need saving.
Sometimes they do.
But I am really curious, like, for each of the songs, like, was it a pretty fast process to go, there must be a Wall Street tap dance number, there must be a Coming to America sort of immigrant Fiddler on the Roof moment? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think, the four of us, when we got together, we had a lot of fun just throwing at the wall, like, okay, this is the story of this woman, what was she doing in her 20s? And then it's like, okay, maybe she was like working on Wall Street, she made all this money, like what kind, I mean, it's very similar to the scene in the movie where there you see Rebecca, Diane, and Amos writing the songs. Like, I think that process of even coming up with the initial concepts mirrored that beautifully. And that was one of the things that was so great that we got to play with this movie, is like Ben and Molly and their relationship off screen, their deep friendship, their like, collaborative energy being so, we got that for free on day one. You didn't have to figure out how to get two actors, pay for their dinners, put them in like condos next to each other. Like, you didn't have to get creative. You just had to like put a camera on the two of them, and they ran. And I think Molly has such an incisive, brilliant mind for comedy, and also generates such like wild and insane comic ideas just constantly. And we can talk about Camp Isn't Home and how much of that just, I don't think any of us were thinking about Snapple. She's just talking about Snapple suddenly. And, just like that, the meandering of that chorus, I think is just, I remember her basically doing, once again, what's in the movie of improvising just nonsense and us loving it.
it truly was. I never like when, and I somewhere still just have the doc of like whatever those notes were, but she would just kind of go. And like, someone would be like, well, maybe is she just saying what she's looking at? She'd be like, girl with an open Snapple, the boy
Right.
who's sad. And she would just kind of like do that for a minute, like just take it down.
Just
And
write it down. Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
it was amazing.
No, and then I think, Ben and Noah have such a deep repository of musical theater knowledge, and are such smart songwriters as well. And Ben has done a lot of pop songwriting, so I feel like he was really attuned to being in the process with you, being very like fine-grained about we would all land on something and be like, this is really funny, he'd be like, it's not scanning, and you're like, okay. But I'm sure I don't know, I'm curious for you, like, everybody's just always shocked by like the fact that 4 people wrote this movie and that it was so collaborative, and that it's not like, you know, oh, one person goes off, like writes it, and then 3 other people like give notes on it or something. It's like, it's very much all of it is being written with 4 people in a room. Like, what was that like for you to jump into a process where you're a 5th person in the room, you know, writing something like that?
Yeah, I mean, every project, it's something that's exciting, is very different, and it is so collaborative. Both, I mean, you know, film is too, but like theater, incredibly collaborative in the room. You're making changes on the fly. You have, you know, you're rewriting overnight, and that is like with a group of people. But how that works in that collaboration on, you know, on Project X is different than another one. But it's kind of the same with songwriting. Like, maybe a bit less with musical theater songwriting, but definitely like pop songwriting. You know, songs are written by so many people, and there is this sense of, let's, you know, find the best bridge and the best whatever and the best beat and the best lyric. And a lot of times it is several people in a room putting it together. But I think what surprised me is there still tends to be like a captain, you know, someone you're like, all right, Beyonce gets to decide what the song is. So like, we're all just you know, one person or 2 people are really like, this is what it's going to be. And it was amazing to just kind of be like, all right, like we're all here, and no one, you know, at times as we find like things, maybe someone's driving for a little bit, but it's really to see the 4 of you and that free flow of like both ideas, but also like kind of a lack of preciousness and like a willingness to both let go, but also like crack each other up and have a sense of like, this is a very collaborative thing. And then also really generously, I'm entering so many of these collaborations being like, and I'm being hired to sort of make sure it happens in the best way. And sometimes that means like, this was a project in an amazing way where it's like, oh, like, okay, they're take a lot of the music creation kind of after we've been in the room, let's build that out like into a song, and like me and the computer for music. Other projects, it's sort of, I'm here more as like a lyric person, or I'm here more as a guide it through and maybe like pitching like a top line or a melody. And it was, but always in service of, how can I be helpful to you people who are like bringing me in? And was just immediately, so I just felt so like welcome to express things and be a part of it. And also like no fear in saying something that was going to be bad and throwing things out there, because of just watching you all work. Like after our first, I mean, we basically wrote Women Cannot Read in like a Sunday. And after that session where I was like, I got to come in with like 5 different pitches and like 4 different and like, it was so easy, but also like no fear of, okay, great. Like I'm no longer, you know, I'm always scared initially. I say one wrong thing or I pitch 3 bad ideas, and suddenly, you know, a lawyer is emailing me about how nice it was to like work with and you know, just feeling like there was that space to mess around, and seeing you 4 having that, like I have never really experienced something quite like that in a room, and it was amazing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. I mean, yeah, just drilling down into some of that, because I am so interested like in what your process is like within that space. You know, I think because I'm not a musician, I'm just curious, like in those moments where we would like throw something, or someone would be singing a you know, a line, but there's really no melody yet to it, and or just talking about a vibe. It's like you are so good at not being like, okay, let me understand that more deeply, and let's just stay in this sort of you know, exploratory discussion phase without putting fingers on keys. It's like immediately you were giving us some direction to go into musically, and I think that was so helpful, even if it ended up changing 5 different times or ended up being wrong. But there was already like introduced into a space that kind of you know, the abstraction of what music feels like, no longer an idea, but like really like, oh, okay, we're now in the Women Cannot Read mode of this kind of klezmer balalaika type you know,
Yeah
sound. And yeah, you know, like where what is that? What's going on in your head in that moment? Like, how do you just put fingers to keys and something comes out?
Well, again, just feeling the freedom to do that. I think that is how a lot of I work a lot that way. I think a lot of songwriters do, is you're in the room and you're just throwing out ideas in the hopes that one of them is going to scan and find a melody. And it's kind of just like getting used to, and I think we all feel it too, but it's like, yeah, when you're starting, you don't know what the melody is. Like, it's one thing to go away and come in, and which also happens, where it's like you have a top line or you have whatever the hook is melodically and you're filling in all the other words. It's another thing to kind of be in the room and like, we're going to discover this, but also when you find it, like, you're like, oh, that's the melody. Great. So we have kind of different pitches. We found the melody, and then learning how to let that structure guide the rest of it. It just felt very like that. That is something that the way that I work with like people I've worked with for a long time, where we just know there's both no preciousness, but also if someone's really excited about it, like to give the space to let them be excited about it and not immediately shut things down. And the fact that, again, you four had that for each other, but also we're so down with that for me, was, I think, like immediately made a very close collaboration in that sense, just an intimate, like, oh, okay, well, let's like add something under this without fear that it's going to be wrong.
I guess that, I don't know, what you were saying made me think about how like this process of writing the music was so like the whole film in micro, in that like, you mentioned the disco playlist that I sent, but also Ben and Noah had made those documents for each song of like, here's 6 different musical numbers from other musicals that are in this vein, and like a real blurb about all the beats. And so it's like kind of a weird thing where like we haven't even talked about how much of that, really talked about how much preparation was going on before we sat in the room, and it was like any idea is free. It's like there is this element, and I think we were playing with it. It's like, if you really are prepared and you do that work beforehand, you can throw it all out, but everybody's coming in with some sense of what the goal is.
Yeah.
And once again, the goal can change, but I think not having to sit down and be like, I don't know, let's do something funny. Like, what's funny? It's like that's hard in one session.
I would say, yeah.
It's like starting from the thing of like, okay, let's just come up with the concept and make sure that's funny. Let's make sure the references are funny. Let's make sure the tone is funny, maybe in 3 separate meetings or
and also that's been filtered through the 4 of you. Like, it's through 4 brains. It's like past the test between all 4. So it's not even like one person spent 3 weeks planning it and they bring it in and everyone's like, there's a couple of like good moments here, but yeah, it was so in place already coming in a great way.
Right. And then it's like, once you're there, you realize, oh, wow, like all that preparation, we still have basically nothing, which is good, because then you kind of have to build, you have the pedestal and no statue, and it's good to then, I don't know, like, so, very few of the initial ideas of like the lyrical content, except for maybe Women Cannot Read, were there before. Like even No Tomorrow and the whole thing of basing that in kind of Annie references, I don't think that was there before we sat down to actually write the song.
Yeah, no, well, there was the, like, Annie shows up at Studio 54, so that was part of it. But that, yeah, I remember like that just being part of the pitch, was like, what is this song called? Like Disco Nights, like you just trying to find it. And then at some point being like, all right, whether Annie's like the Annie's also, which didn't even really make it into the movie. Like, it wasn't like this thing that like led it. But the song is called No Tomorrow because of that reason. And I think actually I have a memory, maybe like this mysterious like 3rd grade kid, but like of your face, like I think we were maybe like an hour in or 2 to try to find what it is, and you were like, I think No Tomorrow is like probably just like good enough, It was like true, because that's part of it as well, as like, you just, once you have the idea, you can build it out and turn it into something shiny, but you need the sometimes you hit it and you're like, oh yeah, like, okay, that, like Women Cannot Read, like we found that melody on that thing. It's like, okay, that never went anywhere else. But other times it's like the idea, you don't necessarily know, but you decide on it. And then as you might build it out and it's disaster and you go back. But a lot of times that decision making like is the thing you need to kind of unlock the floodgates and just go with something.
Totally. And then it kind of shifts from, I don't know, like we were talking about with camp isn't home. And this is one of the things that I, also in the editing of the film, I am particularly admiring of Molly about, where she can be so loose and so free and so just like, as if it's just, you don't know where it's coming from. It's just out, but then go back and be very precise and very editorial. And I think that was like a cool aspect of also just the four of us, we all fall somewhere on that spectrum of, super controlled and super loose. And I think, coming up with those initial ideas and being very like you're saying, finding that idea that just opens the floodgates and letting things flow, and then going in and being like, okay, like, which Polish town rhymes with Soviets? Okay, Sosnowiec, like, like going through very fine-tooth comb, and you also did such a wonderful job of taking these sessions that, most of the song was already there at the end of the sessions, but I think it needed that special gloss that you really, that you were able to put on it, and really crack like the final structure of the songs and the bridges and the, just knowing that we had a safe place to land of a true like skilled technician as well. I don't know. That's part of what allows for that level of creativity.
And also, yeah, knowing that like when that gets built out, send it back. But then there's always something else to, as it becomes more tangible, the notes become more tangible, the direction becomes more tangible, the bad decisions become clearer. In the way too, just like something I always think about with collaboration, but as you're talking, I'm just reminded that I also really felt kind of in initially speaking with the four of you, is that sense of the ultimate goal here is like the priority is making the movie and like making it funny. And like, there are a lot of other priorities and there are a lot of things that come through and, but at the end of the day, like sometimes you're in a collaboration and you're like, this person's goal is to chase some artistic vision only they can see, or this person's goal is to be seen as X, or this person's goal is to make this person feel bad. Like, and to just feel like actually everyone's on the same page. And this was really the first, maybe not the first set I'd seen so much of, but definitely the one that like I had the most context for, was around, and was just so blown away by all four of you. And, with you and Molly behind the camera too, but also with Ben and Noah, especially with the musical stuff. And I'm sure on many other things that I wasn't around for, that it's like, we are here to make this thing. And it was hard. And like, I'm sure some other interview, whatever, like there's more info about the process, but like just leaving so many of those days going, just moved by what you were making, but also by the way the four of you prioritized each other and the movie beyond anyone's individual ego in a way that I feel like, just is very special and unique when you have that many people. And when you are sharing writing, when you are sharing directing, when you are sharing acting and scenes and improv, obviously is like such a give and take. And you just brought like a kind of work ethic, but also awareness of the ultimate goal that I feel like was there with the songs too, where it's like, we're here to make this thing. And if my idea doesn't work, all good. And if I need to not talk for 20 minutes because they're on a roll, even though I do have 5 great ideas, great, like let them go. Like that's a hard, that again, your history, I guess, just facilitates, but it felt really natural. So well, I hope everyone enjoys the movie.
Thank you so much for chatting about all of this, Mark, and thank you for watching the process on Theater Camp and the music of Theater Camp.
Thanks, everybody.